just don't think I would. So June 18, I had to go to the embassy. I was sure I was going to get a visa because I had all my papers right. But I was refused. And I was so depressed about this. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't even work. I had to ask off. Then I said, okay, I have to do something. I went to people that I knew, or the people who knew people of influence in Kaduna, Hassan Kassina, people like that. I went to him. And then it occurred to me, I said, why not take up this guy's offer? So the general was living in Dawaki Road, which is in a highbrow area. And I was living around that too. And the consulate in Kaduna, I don't think they still have it, was in Dawaki Road as well. So, off Dawaki Road. So I went there with my friend, and I told my friend, I warned him, I said, listen, if we get there, let's just not argue with the soldiers or something. Anyway, I was bold, I wore my babariga without the agbada, and I asked, I said, well, I'm Dr. Akande, I want to see Muktari, I want to see the son of the general. And he looked at me. I said, okay, wait. There were soldiers and police in the house. And a few minutes later, I was led in. And this general, I recognized him from newspaper buttons and stuff. He stood up and shook my hand. Just stood up. I was impressed. And then someone came and hugged me. And just made me very comfortable. He was watching CNN, I will never forget. And he said, sit down. How can I help you? And I told him my story. He never asked if I was a Christian or Muslim or if I'm from Southwest. And if you look at me, you think I'm from Southeast. So he didn't even. So none of that was important to him. And I felt the integrity of the person talking to me. And I was really impressed. And he said, look, listen, I'm going to give you a letter. Come back Tuesday. That was a Sunday. And get the letter. On Tuesday I was there. And he gave me the letter. Do not open it. I said, yes, sir. But when I got home, I was tempted. So eventually I submitted this letter and it did the trick. So I made up my mind. I told everybody who would listen, all my relatives, and the people I've been to. I let them know that we have somebody here who was out of power, who was a big man, and he just never asked what religion I belong. And so when I hear stories, about somebody wanting to Islamize Nigeria or that is this or that, I begin to wonder whether this is the same person that we are talking about. So I'm just privileged to be here to tell you this is the kind of person that I met. And this is the kind of person that we need in this country. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's give a big round of applause for that very powerful testimony about Buhari. We are going to go right to the question, and I have the first question here submitted by Professor Wale Awudia. He says, how are you and the APC going to counter the PDP strategy of using the police and the military to intimidate the Nigerian voter? He said that there was an example of that played out in Ekiti recently. Yep. And then he says, the PDP has been in power for 16 years, entrenched already in governance. As the opposition party that is likely to take over power in less than 2 weeks, what are the strategies in place to meet the extraordinary expectations of Nigerians? Over to you, Prof. So we're going to take a number of questions so that the Prof can answer them all at once. Now, I do have questions on the economy here. The first one says that I'm very passionate about my country, Nigeria. However, in the past 3 to 4 months, we have noticed the worst time in the Nigerian economy. The Naira has lost its value and is still losing much value. business and economy as of today is on a freeze and nothing is happening. What are your plans to induce recovery of the Nigerian economy? A similar question, and I'm just going to wrap it up since everybody seems to be saying the same thing. What will you do about the empty treasury? I want them to hear that. Another specific question on the economy saying that what is your plan to tackle the poverty rate, which you alluded to, Prof, in your opening remarks? So what are you going to do to tackle the poverty rate? And he estimated it at 33% of the Nigerian population. I think it's more than that. And Sister Salako, Kawiya Salako says, are there any plans to restore the Nigerian oil refineries? Are there any plans to restore the Nigerian oil refineries? And he believes that if this is done, it can also create more jobs. So maybe you take those questions, sir.
Thank you very much. I will start with the plans to use the police and military to intimidate Nigerian voters. First, I want to emphasize that it is illegal to deploy military personnel to polling stations and polling booths. The Nigerian Court of Appeal has already ruled that it is illegal. And in fact, the High Court before then had ruled that it was illegal to do so. But now the Court of Appeal has repeated it. But we still find that the government and even the military has been saying that the deployment is almost, should almost be taken for granted. So we have said that this would be illegal. We have been telling not just locally, but we've also been speaking to our international friends to say that this kind of illegality must not be permitted. As a matter of fact, the reason why this is particularly important is because there was, in the Ekiti elections, in the Ekiti state elections, there was a secretly recorded conversation between a senior military person and 3 government ministers and the candidate of the PDP who was running for governorship of Ekiti State. And that conversation was all about how to use the military, how to use security personnel to rig the elections. To begin by arresting senior members of the opposition the night before the elections, and then to rig the elections. This tape was all over the internet for a long time. We felt that with that kind of revelation, and with those ministers actually named, and 2 of them have already accepted that they were the individuals on those tapes. It is clear that the security agencies are being used or have been used in the past, and there will be an attempt to use them again to rig the elections. And we have said that the government ought to be held responsible for this. So the kind of things that we're doing is putting pressure, both locally and internationally, to ensure that this does not happen. We've been talking to those who are saying hold free, peaceful elections, that in order to guarantee peaceful elections, you must guarantee that process. You must make sure that the process is not thwarted by security agencies and especially by the military. You must make sure that all of the processes are done correctly. So we're putting a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is the Nigerian voter. The most important component is the Nigerian voter. We have been speaking to our people and telling our people that it is our right to demand change, and that the right way to demand change is by the ballot, is by our vote. And so we must defend the ballot, must defend our vote. What happened in Osun State, a similar thing was tried out in Osun State. Soldiers were deployed to Osun State, so many thousands of soldiers, and they were hooted, many of them were hooted, so they couldn't even be identified just before the elections. But the people of Osun were resolute. They stood, especially the women, they stood at the ballot. They refused to leave the ballot, the polling units. After the voting, they remained until the votes were counted. They stood up as it were, to the security agencies. And at the end of the day, the APC prevails in Osun State. So we're saying to a lot of the voters also and to a lot of members of the party that it is our duty to defend the ballot. And what happens usually is that at on the eve of the elections, senior members of the party will be arrested. That is standard practice. In Osun State, almost 1,000 senior members of the party were arrested, including national officers of the party who are in attendance. That's almost standard fare now. And we're saying that these kinds of things cannot continue to be done. But when they arrest them, they expect that the followership will be scattered. So we're doing as much as we can in terms of educating people and encouraging our people to stand up for what is their right and to insist that they will not be intimidated by the police or military. What are the strategies to meet the extraordinary expectations? I was saying, I believe, to one of our colleagues yesterday that we were in Zamfara State, campaigning in Zamfara State, and our boss, the boss that we were in, myself and the general and several other members of the campaign team, the boss was literally covered by the people of Zamfara State, all of those who were meeting us. We couldn't even see ahead of us. They were just all over the bus. And they were, of course, everywhere. And the general was saying to me, did I see the faces? I should look. He said, look at the faces of these people. So I looked. I said, I can see their faces. Because, of course, their faces were pressed against the glass all around. So I said, I can see their faces well. He said, no, look well. I looked. So I said, well, I can see their faces. They look excited. So he said, no. He said, what I see here is people who expect that on day 2, if you're elected, day 2, you must resolve the problem. So I said to him, yes, they expect you to solve the problem. And he responded, he said, no, they expect us to solve the problem. I think that expectations are extremely high, and that's the way that it should be, and we are committed to ensuring that we do not disappoint the people. That's why we have the programs, and we intend to hit the ground running and to begin to implement those programs from day 1. The reason why we are so confident is because of the genuineness of the cause for change. And I'm extremely confident, especially because of the kind of leadership at the top of that ticket. General Buhari is a man of integrity, he's a man of forthrightness, he's an honest man, and he's a man who takes his own word seriously. That for me gives a lot of confidence that we're not going to get there and we start hearing all sorts of things and we can't do what we ought to do. We can't fight corruption, we can't stem the bleeding and all of that. So I'm very confident that he will provide the right leadership. We already have the manifesto, we already have the platform, we know what it is we want to do. And he's the kind of person who will go to work every day and ensure that we keep to the plan. So that I think gives me a lot of comfort. So the first strategy, aside from going through all of the programs which we'll be looking at one after the other, the strategy is to keep focused. The strategy is to do day by day, trying to deal with the issues using the plans that we are presented in our platform. Now, just go straight to the question of how do we induce recovery of the Nigerian economy? Of course, you know, as I've said earlier, that one of the major problems of the economy, or the major problem, the reason why the economy isn't running the way it ought to run, is first and foremost corruption. And as I've said, we're going to have to deal with corruption from day 1. We're going to have to ensure that we put in place, of course, already you know the anti-corruption agencies exist. ICPC, EFCC, the NFIU, all of them exist. But what they need is the political will. They need to see that the leadership, and that's the president and his cabinet, are completely committed to fighting corruption.